Survivor's guilt has to be one of the most unfortunate mental illnesses. You go through the trouble of surviving some event that kills multiple other people, and instead of getting to enjoy your life, you just get trauma. That's gotta suck.
There is no meme. This is just a threat.
Welcome back to another video where I look at two characters in Fire Emblem's history who have the same basic idea, but execute it in two different ways. Today, I'm going to be looking at two characters who suffer from survivor's guilt, starting with Harken in FE7. Now, if you want to harken back, I actually did a character analysis on Harken a year ago? Might be longer. So some of this is retreading that ground. But, I'm just going to shamelessly talk about something I already talked about. And you can't stop me. So, for reference, Harken was a knight alongside Elbert, the main lord of FE7's father. Like, Eliwood's dad is Elbert, and their squad was wiped out. The only survivor was Harken, after Elbert had committed FE dad disease, which is really messed up of him, by the way. When Elbert was dying a tragic death, he never stopped to think, what about Harken? And I think that's on him. So, after that happened, Harken went on a mission for revenge. He didn't make any contact to anyone, he infiltrated Nurgle's assassin group, the Black Fang, and was biding his time trying to strike at Nurgle. And then he's eventually found by Eliwood and companions, and is encouraged to help them, because they want to kill Eliwood. So, Harken supports with Isidora, and it's the support that really goes into the ramifications of what he did. Because for a month, which actually should be more than a month, he just never said anything. So, you know, when everyone from that squad got wiped out, he gave no evidence that he wasn't included in that. And as you can imagine, Isidora is pretty upset by this. And, you know, Harken apologizes, like a good man should. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And he immediately wants just some kind of punishment so it can just be wrapped up nice and quick. He did something wrong, he gets some kind of punishment, and then everything's hunky-dory. No. That's not how that works. Isidora's like, nah. It's not that easy for you. You don't just get a punishment and get to walk away from that. You hurt a lot of people by just making everyone who loved and cared about you think you were dead. And Harken's kind of like, hey, don't cry. He's trying really hard. In case it's not obvious by now, Harken and Isidora are a thing. So this is his girlfriend, and he just left her for a month and some change. And he's like, hey, I'm back now. Come on, huh? Come on, give it up for your boy Harken. She's like, no. Get the hell out of here with that. You don't just get to come back in my life. And that's just how the C support ends. So immediately, Harken's character isn't just like, oh man, isn't this guy tragic? Isn't everything terrible for him? They immediately are like, no, you can't just do something like that and blame it on the trauma. Like, Harken, though it's you can sympathize with him, for sure, but he isn't blameless. The game doesn't make excuses for him, which I think is important. Because it's not like, oh, I know you messed up everything, come on back. A lot of stories and games do that. Not this one. His actions have consequences. And then we go on to the B support, and Harken is still trying. Like, he understands what he did wrong. But he also still doesn't seem to get, like, hey, he's back. Because it's not that easy. He just doesn't get it. Because he ran off and vanished for over a month, the ramification is, can Isadora trust him now? Can his lover trust him that he won't do that again? Because he can say all he wants, but he's broken that trust. That's a ramification he didn't think of. And that's important here. It's one of those instances where you understand that Harkin is not a bad man. He was traumatized, and he acted out of grief and anger. So you understand why he did that. You also understand why Isadora isn't immediately keen to forgive him. Isadora is not treated like she's acting unreasonably here. Harkin's not saying, oh, you're thinking too hard, or, oh, don't think... No, he's taking this in. He's listening. And this is what makes Harkin more sympathetic than he could otherwise be. Because he's willing to listen and understand he breached her trust, he shouldn't have done this, this has ramifications. It shows that, yes, what happened to him was horrible, but at the end of the day, he's a grown-ass man, and he made decisions as a grown-ass man that he has to live with. But here we are at the end, because remember, Harkin and Isadora are not bad people. He's saying he's sorry, it's all his fault, and he seems to think that she outright hates him. And that's not the case, she's just upset. Because, obviously... So, they do get their resolution. But only after Harkin came face to face with what he did wrong. And Isadora even has a suicidal thought there. Similar to Harkin, who intended to strike at Nurgle even if it killed him. But... this is the up and there. Losing my train of thought there. And here we get what was very obvious. Like, you could tell they were together before, but this is where they outright state that they were going to get married. Which also adds so many more layers to Isadora's perspective. Because, you know, her fiancé did all this. Not just her boyfriend, her fiancé. So, there we get our resolution. Harkin and Isadora are going to be together again. And Harkin is going to never do this again. So, maybe the resolution came a little too easy, but at the same time, Isadora never hated him. She was just upset with him, which is a very important distinction. So, what I like about Harkin and how his guilt is handled, you understand why he did it, you understand why people are willing to be angry and forgive him at the same time. Now, while none of that is bad, it is fairly standard for characters of this nature. Like, yes, I brought up that a lot of characters can do something wrong and then it just gets hand-waved. They're like, oh, you were under, like, you know, bad things, like circumstances, it's fine. But at the same time, there are still a lot of stories as well that do have a very similar arc to Harkin. So, the other thing I like, and I think this is what makes Harkin more unique, and it's also something that can only be done in Fire Emblem. What if he tries to get with someone other than Isadora? Because we see right here, Vida has a support. So, their support, I'm gonna go over this a little quickly here, because it's not super important to what I want to talk about, why they fall in love, as much as the fact that they do. Basically, Vida was in a similar position to Harkin, where she lost her lord and had to serve the Fang, but unlike Harkin, who was sad boy hours, Vida was pissed. She was fighting for something, not just a hollow chance at revenge. She was fighting for Bern, her home country, and for what she believed in, her young squire, her young prince, Zephiel. Which is obviously really funny, because we know what happens to Zephiel. But still, Vida did everything for a reason, to help her country. Whereas Harkin was just being selfish. So he's like, wow, I can understand your conviction. I can understand what it means to be a knight. They're both really good knights at their job. And so you can see how this little thing comes together. What's really important... well, first of all, I really like this bit that Vida's like, oh no, I've caught feelings for a white blonde boy. No one must ever know. What's interesting about that romance is it doesn't work. Harkin and Vida's ending remark that because of their service to their countries, they never meet again. They fall in love on the battlefield, and nothing happens. They're forced away from each other. So, how does that strengthen Harkin as a character? In and of itself, not at all. But, let's go over to Isadora. Isadora can also fall in love with someone that's not Harkin. Old Legault right here. And again, why they fall in love isn't too important. I'm going to skip through it. Isadora is, super straight-laced, by the books, the, big ideal knight. Legault is a devilish little man who's so fruity he could pass for an orchard. So naturally, you get that sort of straight-laced trickster dynamic going on. It's very popular. I don't need to explain why people love that kind of trope. But what matters is, again, their ending. Because Isadora and Legault's ending remark that they did fall for each other during the events of FE7, but they went about doing their own thing. Legault is over trying to find Fang members, being a little dubious thief, and Isadora is being a knight. But it remarks that they would not meet again for 10 years, and when they did, they would meet as enemies. Again, their romance doesn't work. So, combine that with Harkin and Vida not working, and it paints this idea that Harkin and Isadora are meant for each other. And no matter what they do, they'll always come back to one another. And I think that's really sweet, and adds a layer to both of their characters that makes, Isadora's role as a straight-laced character and Harkin's role as a Survivor's Guilt survivor. That is not how that sentence should go. And I think that's what makes Harkin a stronger case for it. It's Survivor's Guilt through the lens of his romance. That is how it is viewed. That is the best way to look at it. So, that's Harkin, and that's how he pertains to Survivor's Guilt. But remember, this whole series is looked at through two characters. Harkin's the first one. For the second character, you're going to have to get through my Patreon shill. I'm sorry, I will make it quick. Except I'm not sorry, because I want your money. I have a Patreon, link is in the description below if you wish to donate, and I'd like to thank some of my subscribers, such as Adebayo Thompson, Andrew Crockett, Bean Juice, Benz Again, Dr. McBackstab, Great Riek, Hell on Heelys, Jespacito 2, Lie17 Bolt. That's an IRL friend of mine, I should know that one better. Mark the Valiant War Criminal, Morga Lorgan, Nevrix the Tourmaline Project Creator, Played Arrow, Shen Lu, The Fool, The World's Most Unironic 8.5 Tail Stand, Walmart Greeter, Young Girl Owen, Brentendo 11, Drew Hack, Fire Emblem Lord, Ginger, Goo Goo Gaga, Cornelia Milkers 92, Maple Knight, and Upscale Furry Trash. Thank you all for your continued support, and let's get on to the actual next character. Nah, it's Gilbert. Before we get into Gilbert, I would like to thank the YouTube channel YICL17 for uploading all of the Fire Emblem Three Houses supports. I could have very easily gotten footage for this myself, but my laptop's over here, and my Switch is all the way over here. It's just too much work. So, Gilbert, like Harkin, also suffers from survivor's guilt due to a very similar scenario, where the father of the main lord, in this case it's Lambert, father of Dimitri, goes off and gets killed somewhere. But unlike Harkin, who was actually there and a part of it, Gilbert wasn't. He just was doing something else at the time, which is pretty significant. It shows that survivor's guilt can affect you even if you weren't there. Because the idea that, oh, if I was there, things could have been different. If I was there, I could have this, or I could have that. And so, even doing the exact same setup, they do it in a different enough way, that manages to make it so that Gilbert and Harkin don't feel like the exact same. And the other thing to keep in mind is that with Harkin, it was shown through the lens of his love life. With Gilbert, it is shown through the lens of his daughter. So, to further explain what Gilbert does, is he goes on a self-imposed exile after King Lambert dies. He goes away from all of his loved ones, and then he starts putting his efforts into raising Dimitri. Because Dimitri, well, with Lambert dead, he is going to be the king, and Gilbert's like, I'm not fudging up like this again. I'm going to make sure Dimitri is the best king he can possibly be. So, that's actually a little bit more sympathetic than Harkin, who was just going for revenge and, you know, going on a tale of revenge, dig 2 graves, yada yada yada. Gilbert was actually working towards something. That makes him more sympathetic than Harkin. What makes him less sympathetic than Harkin is he didn't just abandon his fiancée, which, you know, still a messed up thing to do. Don't think Harkin's getting off easy for that. Gilbert abandons his wife and daughter. Annette is like, I don't know, 10 years old, 9 years old or something when this happens, and her father, Gustav, goes on this self-imposed exile. He messed up. He did everything wrong. He should have been there when people needed him most. And he abandons everything, changes his name to Gilbert, and then just is on his little self-imposed exile helping Dimitri. Now, you can very clearly see the problems with this. Like, hello, buddy. You have a wife and daughter. You can't just leave in your little pity party. Like, I know a night in exile is just one of those phrases that's really cool, but you can't just do that. And Gilbert acknowledges this. Gilbert knows he was in the wrong. But this just creates an Ouroboros of sad boy posting. Because he feels like he doesn't deserve to be loved because he failed King Lambert. So he went on a self-imposed exile and he abandoned his wife and daughter because he believes he doesn't deserve their love. But then he acknowledges that that was a bad decision. So now he's sad because his wife and daughter are suffering because of him. And then he's sad about that. And then he feels like he doesn't deserve love. And then this just keeps going. And going. And just like Harkin... Let me back up a little bit. Just like Harkin, Gilbert immediately tries to take an easy way out. I'll just leave forever. No, dude. You have to face the consequences of your actions. With Gilbert, the depressing nature of this event is more pronounced. Because, you know, Fire Emblems progressed farther, they can show more things in cutscenes and voice acting, yada yada yada. So, Harkin wasn't able to delve into it in a way that Gilbert is. Now, as Gilbert's relationship with Annette continues, he tries to reconnect. He makes a little wooden doll. Gilbert manages to, you know, have hobbies. He doesn't... The problem is, though, is he doesn't do things because he enjoys them. He does things to not think about things. There's a support with Hahnemann and Alois where he fishes, but he's not really fishing. At least I think he does it with Hahnemann. Where he's trying not to think about it. And that's something that, again, Annette brings up, that people bring up. Gilbert's kind of just a coward. He changed his name, he went on his big thing, but he's just running from it. He's not taking responsibility for his actions, and just like Harkin, the game is making sure that Gilbert knows that. Like, he can't just run away from this. And you see, his actions are affecting Annette. Like, let me go back to that a little bit. Like, when she was sad and depressed, she would cry, because her father's not there. The gifts he gives her, or gave her when he was around, don't matter because he's not around. And Gilbert, again, like, much like with Harkin, Annette's anger is justified. They do not try to paint Annette as acting crazy. She still loves him. Even though she's offended by the idea that Gilbert is just, you know, giving her dolls because, like, oh, it's what I used to do. She still wants it. She still wants her father's love. It can be, it's like, it shows, without necessarily having to tell you, how good of a father and husband Gilbert had to have been. It doesn't have to give a flashback of Gilbert, like, taking care of Annette or anything. Just the fact that Annette is still trying to reconvene with him and still rekindle their family, when a lot of people would have just told Gilbert to go F himself, it shows it without having to say it. Which I think is really, like, subtle and clever on the writing's part. Also, Gilbert discovers Jesus. That's another part of his exile. He becomes very pious. Pious? I'll never remember how that word's pronounced. So, you know, just some good old-fashioned, God-fearing survivor's guilt. So, Annette, now the time skip has happened. She's still trying. Remember, the time skip is 5 years. So, Gilbert has abandoned her for, like, 5 years. And then the time skip happens. And they spoke. They've had conversations. But he still hasn't come home. And Annette is still trying. It tells you all you need to know about her and Gilbert just by the fact that she doesn't give up. And again, we see Gilbert in his sad boy talking. Like, I should have been there. It doesn't matter what the dead think. I'm doing this to myself. Hahnemann, in particular, has a really good line about this. Hahnemann says something like, the only one who is making you feel misery is you. Or something like that. And which is true about Gilbert. And, like, that's the messed up thing. Is, yes, the only person who thinks Gilbert deserves to suffer is Gilbert. And that's significant. Because unlike Harkin, where, you know, people were angry with him, blah, 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 Gilbert is messing himself up. Everything about Gilbert is in his own head. Because, you know, that's how mental illness and trauma works. Like, oh, it's all in your head. Yeah. No shit. Congratulations. You want a cookie? And here we get the big emotional crux of the support. He gives her a big bag of letters that we're not actually allowed to see because Three Houses cutscene budget is not... Oh my god, I know this has been discussed about the game to Hell and High Water. But God, look at that gravel pile. That looks so bad. How did I never notice how bad that looked? Huh. I guess I was too emotionally invested in the characters to care about background details. Ooh, man. 3 houses, definitely don't look good if you look at it too hard. So he leaves behind a bunch of letters. And the support ends. Annette is going to read them. It's basically their to-be-continued text. And now, this gets me, alright? Basically, the entire time Gilbert was in exile, he wrote letters to his wife and daughter for everything. Birthdays, holidays, he would write to them. But he could never bring himself to send them. Because again, remember that sad boy Ouroboros. I messed up, I don't deserve love. Neglects his wife and daughter. Man, they must hate me because I'm neglecting them. I love them and want them to know that I'm okay. But my actions have caused them great suffering. And it just keeps going. Someone has to step in and break that Ouroboros. Someone has to take that snake and rip it. Gilbert cannot get out of it on his own. Time just made it worse. So that's what Annette does. She comes in, essentially does all but physically slap her father in the face, and go, hey, we love you. We care about you. Please stop hurting yourself. Your apologies changed nothing. And this is how Annette does it. Because those letters were what she needed. The knowledge that Gilbert does love them. It's like she has the proof in an Ace Attorney game. Where she can just shove it in the prosecution's face like, look, you do care. I have the proof. And this is what's essentially going to force Gilbert to acknowledge his family. They have these letters. They know he cares. They're not going to let him get away. It shows that when something happens like this, like, it's not, the person alone is not always capable of bettering themselves. With Harkin, he was able to eventually come to terms with what he did and earnestly apologize for it. But Gilbert's not capable of that, and that doesn't necessarily make him a worse person than Harkin. He just needed outside help, which I think is true for problems like this. It's not just, oh, man up, or blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you need someone to come talk to you. Sometimes, look at him smiling like that. Sometimes you need an outside source to come in. And then, here's their ending, where Gilbert throws away his fake name, he returns to being Gustav, and he and his family get together again. The whole 10 years of absence is a little awkward, but they do become a loving family once more. I love that last line. As the shadow of war receded from the kingdom, the three spent their days happily making up for lost time. God, that gets me. I'm actually getting a little teary-eyed. Yes, I cry at video games. I played Yakuza 3 a few weeks ago, and I cried. Chapter 11 of Yakuza 3 is one of the most gut-wrenching things I've had to experience in a game. God, now I'm crying because I'm thinking about Yakuza 3. This is the Ouroboros loop of sadness. But, okay. That's the end. I wanted to highlight, again, how the same exact idea can be done in 2 different ways and produce 2 unique characters that are both really good. Gilbert is one of my top 3 favorite characters in Three Houses. Harkin I also really like. I genuinely like both of these characters, and I hope that you maybe learn to like something about them too. Alright, thank you guys very much for watching. God, I actually am crying. Son of a... Yakuza's a really good game. That's what you need to take away from this video. Go play Yakuza 3. And then go play 0. And then Kiwami 1, 2, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Gaiden, Man Who Erased His Name. Like a Dragon, Ishin. Judgment, Lost Souls. Did I forget anything? Oh yeah, that one Yakuza zombie spinoff. Go play Yakuza. That is all.